Welcome to the Casey Cease Show. Casey is your entrepreneurial guide. Dive into weekly insights that blend inspiration with practical strategies to grow your business with integrity. From boosting sales to building strong relationships, Casey shares the essentials to help both your venture and personal dreams flourish. Ready to elevate your entrepreneurial journey? Let's dive in.
Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Casey Cease Show. I'm here with my good friend and my CPA, Sarah Jones with Sarah Jones CPA. Sarah, so good to have you on the show today. Why don't you take a minute and just share a little bit about yourself, and we'll dive in.
Casey, thank you so much for having me. And I really enjoy working with you. When you told me you wanted to come on, I was like, come on, what is Casey doing now? And I'm so excited. I'm Sarah Jones of Sarah Jones CPA. We're a full service CPA firm. I say in Houston because nobody knows where we're at, but we're in the Conroe area. We really have a passion for helping our clients understand all of the accounting and accountancy, and that's totally not a word, but I just made it up. Things that aren't fun and they aren't interesting, and they stress a lot of people out because we think they're fun and we think that they're interesting. And we really like to empower our clients, give them solutions that they can use to give them strategy and just overall sense of being empowered and in charge of their business and also on their personal side. Just to have a success roadmap, just to feel like they're in charge. I feel like a lot of times there's so much misinformation or some fear and you're operating out of fear. You need a CPA to kind of come along and do that with you. And that's what we really try to do.
Yeah, I've enjoyed watching you grow your business. I remember when I was coaching your husband, Phil, and on the pastoral nonprofit side, and he was like, yeah, I think my wife's going to go off and start her own accounting firm and tax, planning firm and everything else. And I was like, it sounds like a snooze fest. And I'd never met you. And then I really noticed you online around the time of the pandemic because you were doing something amazing. You're like, hey, any small business owners out there that need help filing an extension, or I think it was for like franchise taxes or something like that. And no questions asked. Hey, send me what you need. And I remember I know how important it is to have an accountant, but I had not had a good streak of luck working with CPAs and accountants as I was scaling my business. And so when I saw you online, I remember sending you like one of my things and you're like, all right, it's done. It was super quick. And then you're like, I was like, but I have 3 more. And you're like, great, send them over. And it was done. And I remember for me, 1, I recognized you from your husband, but 2, you were just being so helpful. And that's been my experience across the board, not only with you, but your great team that you have, that you genuinely love helping your customers. How did you get to where you are today, being Sarah Jones CPA, having your own firm, all of that? I know a bit of your story. Why don't you share a little bit of your backstory of how you ended up in accounting with the multiple degrees that you have and certifications, and then taking that leap of faith and starting your own business? Why don't you walk us through that journey?
Oh, well, it's a fun story, a little bit of an embarrassing story because I've made every single mistake in the book. But I always have been in accounting. I went to school and got my undergraduate. I really was on more of the budget analysis side. And then I did kind of full circle accounting. And then my last job, I was the senior accountant at one of the local municipalities here. And I actually really enjoyed the job. My immediate boss was an awful leader. And I remember one day she threw papers at me. And I was like, man, this is some bull. So I remember I came home and I told Phil, I said, do you mind if I just kind of try to go do this on my own? And I'll never forget what he said because it always stuck with me. And I've quoted this many times. He said, Sarah, like, worst case scenario is you do it. Let's say you suck. I mean, worst case scenario, you go get another job because you do have the degrees and the experience. And it just resonated with me that, hey, this is kind of the worst case scenario. And that gave me enough, because I am very conservative, and that gave me enough confidence to just try it, because worst case scenario, I could just do what I was doing now. So I put in my 90 days notice and started, getting some clients on the side. And at the very beginning, we did bookkeeping, and it was just me. And it was literally lots of work, lots of late nights. There was a lot of missed working out, and I gained a lot of weight very early in my journey that I've been fortunate enough to get off. But I struggled with balance and knowing what to do with clients. And I remember at the beginning, clients had my cell phone and they could text me and call me anytime. And I was burnt out, and I was just trying to get to a point where we could, cover the bills, but also grow a team. So that was in May of 2018 when I quit my full-time job. And probably 18, 19 were really tough. Just learning. And I made every single mistake in the book. In 2020 is the first year that we hit like a really big monumental income level, and I was able to get a great team. And I will say by far, absolutely positively, the reason we've grown is because we do have a great team. We went from me, a team of one, and we're a team of 11 now. And that's why we have the success. And that's why you say things like that, like, oh, we're so helpful. It's because we have a team to help and accommodate. And we all have, I feel like, very shared values. We all like to have fun, serve our clients, really like to be involved in the community. And I think that really, I think and I hope and I pray that it really comes through with the work that we're doing.
No, it absolutely does. And, when I think through just the dynamics of accounting, I've learned so much just working with you and your team on the importance of having an accountant, especially as a business owner, having good bookkeeping. And, everyone's like, oh, why do you want to spend money on bookkeeping? And I say, because tax season's so much easier because everything's already been accounted for as you go. Someone else who like loves that stuff and is good at that stuff, handling it. And, then I'm able to go spend more time doing what I'm great at doing. So you should consider coming to work with your firm because I know you do bookkeeping, you do tax, tax filings, but you also do preparation. Like I know anybody and everybody, but let's say there's a lot of people watching this who are either successful in their own right, working for a large corporation or their own business or are on the entrepreneurial journey as well. Give us an idea of the type of people that you feel like you can help the most.
I would say by far, I mean, we're full tax prep and tax planning. So I do have some, clients that are not entrepreneurs that are just, they have a W-2 position, or maybe they have a lot of investments and things like that. But by far, I feel like where you get the most bang for your buck in a good CPA is if you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, you have a lot going on, because it's not just handling those operations and those filings are a lot more complex than just a typical tax return. But most importantly, you don't know what you can and can't do without a good CPA. You don't know the proper way to do things. And here's the thing too, a lot of people will go and follow people on social media. One, if whoever you're following on social media is not like a tax attorney or a CPA, do not follow them because there's some really bad advice. But somebody will get some advice and think that it applies to them. Well, it might not, because the IRS makes it complicated of things you can or can't do depending on how you're set up. So there's a lot, you could be looking at a tax tip that completely doesn't even apply to you because of your setup. Or there could be a ton of opportunity you could be doing, but you don't know about it because you don't have a really, good proactive CPA. So by far, if you have a business, you need a good CPA. I would say this is very generically speaking because people ask me this all the time. When do I need bookkeeping? I would say, I think there's a lot of value in knowing how to do it because then you know if who's doing it is doing a good job for you. But when it makes sense, what's the opportunity cost of you actually doing that work versus you handing that off to a professional and you going and hustling and doing a couple of more hours of work a week? That to me is huge. That's when it really makes sense. A lot of times accounting is seen as a sunk cost, and a good CPA will actually be a great return on your investment.
Oh, it's been a massive return on investment for my companies and just the hassle effect, right? Where,
Mhm.
I don't want to get in trouble with government. I want to make sure to pay everything that's due, but I also don't know of all the benefits. And I think some of that obscurity is perhaps by design, but when you're working with clients on a growing business, I coach, as you know, I coach a lot of businesses that are scaling and growing pretty substantially. What are some general things that business owners should keep in mind as their organization is growing quite a bit?
Well, I think it's going to be subjective based on where they are. It could be, for example, let's say somebody is starting out and they hit six figures. Well, if at that point they probably don't have a team. So what can you do to get a team? You probably need to get an outsourced bookkeeper / a good CPA. Or it might be very different from somebody that's worked really hard and they're at six figures and they just hit seven figures. Well, you really need a CFO. You really need tax planning. Maybe you're hitting multiple seven figures. You might need to transition from an outsourced CPA like us to us doing oversight and having an internal full-time controller for that internal control, those checks and balances and cash flow and all of that stuff. So it depends on where your journey is. But what I think is important is that a good CPA will know what you need and they'll kind of grow with you over time. And I think that's really important.
No, and you have as well for me. I mean, I remember sitting down with you and planning in 2020. I'd come out and transition from being a full-time pastor and bivocationally having a business on the side to focusing on business full-time and doing ministry as a layperson. And I remember sitting down with you and saying, "Hey, this is where I'm going to go. And one of the reasons I knew we'd get along is you were like, okay, kid, good luck to you. But you were like, yeah, I definitely see you could do that. And so I wanted to plan for growth, and you had enough visionary capacity, which is odd for most of CPAs I dealt with, by the way. Most CPAs I've dealt with, while you are conservative, you can at least visioneer with me and say, okay, if that happens, then we need to think about doing this. You have a great attorney you work with that helped me with on the formation side. But I want to talk a little bit more about how a good CPA does save money, because one, I've actually experienced that. Let's talk a little bit more about how is somebody that's on the expenses a good investment for a business owner?
Well, it goes from A to Z. From the very beginning, if you do not have somebody doing your books, and everybody rolls their eyes because it's not fun, it's not sexy to talk about. Everybody comes to me and automatically wants the big mamma jamma tax plan. And I'm like, I'm all for that, but we need to start with foundations. If your books are not accurate, I can guarantee you're overpaying in tax. Absolutely. I've seen it so many times that I'll bet money on it. So absolutely your books being clean is important. If your books are crap, your tax is crap. And your tax bill is going to be crap too. So having those books. Then after that, having a meeting, getting those reports so that you can actually see what your taxable income is. You can track how that's doing through the year, and then getting with a CPA team that will say, hey, for example, last year at this time you were at 250,000. We're at $400,000 this year. Great job, but let's talk a little bit of tax strategy. Okay? Then having a CPA, and we do this, and most good CPAs will do this as well, just kind of a complimentary look of how you're currently set up. What would I do differently? I do those every single week for new and potential clients to understand why you're set up the way you are. A lot of people come to me and they're like, well, I don't know how I'm set up or how I'm being taxed or what I'm doing. And just that education piece, really, you can see it in clients' faces, just the ease that they get because they're not operating out of fear anymore. They're getting education and they're understanding what's going on. So clean books, get those reports, have proactive meetings with your CPA, in tax planning. Like I very conservatively speaking, because and everybody's different. So there's always going to be anomalies. Because some clients, we hit it out of the park and save hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'll say on average, good tax planning can save a business owner probably 20 to 30% a year on tax. That's money back in your pocket to put in your kids, college funds for you to invest, or maybe to put back in your business and grow the business that much more, or to go take that vacation that your wife's been bugging you for, I mean, to me, I want to be a good steward of my money. And if you can save money with tax planning, and again, you want to work with a CPA, that's less money that's going to the IRS legally, and it's money back in your pocket. So it's a win.
No, it absolutely is. I mean, just the things that we've talked about over the years where you've given me some pointers for my business. Your team has been amazing to sit with and go through cash flow and help me understand my books and to clean them up so that we can actually read them and understand what's going on. I've had, just for the listeners out there, and I'm not completely pointing fingers at other people, but I literally in 2017 was a breaking point for me where my publishing company on paper was going up, but the cash in the bank was going way down and it did not make any sense. And then what I realized was we were currently on the accrual basis, and my CPA, she had a CPA, at least that's what she told me, was double account or basically double recognizing income. And so if I
Mhm.
brought $5,000 in, the books were accounting $10,000 in. And I'm the one that caught it. That's when I knew that I needed to make some big changes. And then for a while after that, we found someone internally to do some bookkeeping. But as the businesses were growing and transitioning, I realized that it's one of my favorite bills to pay every month. I tell people, like, I'm so happy to invest with you and your team because of one, just the hassle's gone, the headache's gone. Number three, it's like, I know I have a team that has my back. And it also, when with all the moving parts with the publishing company, the marketing agency, my coaching practice, the investments I'm making, it just helps to have a third party that objectively looks at and can see the transactions and where everything's going, as well as if they continue to grow, to have a plan. At what point is it, because there's the big four or whatever major accounting houses, like how big of clients can you and your team handle before you start referring out to, bigger accounting firms or whatever?
So it's not so much as like the size of that you are. I think it depends on the services that you need. So I would say probably we handle. Let me rephrase. I have some client, and you've told me this too. Oh, I've got this great friend, but I feel like he's not big enough for you. I'll take small fish because what I love, what's really important for us, is that we work with like-minded people. I like working with people that are coachable. in kind and that we have shared values. That's really important to me. But if you're getting to the point where maybe you're doing 15, 20, 25 million, we can still handle the tax. But as far as like us doing your CFO and your bookkeeping, it really makes sense to have a full-time internal team at that point.
Yeah,
So
that
that's
does make a lot of sense.
hey, we can still do oversight. We can still do your actual tax. We can do your tax planning, but you need somebody in-house. You need an accounting team, a division in your company at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I've consulted for companies that were doing those numbers and they had an in-house accounting team, and it still made me nervous. Seemed like more art than science was happening at that time. But I do like what you're saying on the tax planning, because I do know some folks that you work with that have higher income personally based on success of their business. And for,
Mhm.
for some of them, you help them all, your company is able to help all of it. But I know for them also, the personal tax planning is still extremely helpful along the way.
Sure.
Ready to skyrocket your business and truly connect with your audience on a whole new level? Unleash the power of your story with Lucid Books. Imagine transforming your insights and experiences into a captivating book that not only cements your status as a thought leader, but also weaves a strong bond with your ideal clients. At Lucid Books, we're more than a publishing house. We're your creative partners on a journey to turn your wisdom into a masterpiece that speaks directly to the hearts and minds of your audience. Join forces with us, and let's embark on this incredible adventure together. Your story has the power to inspire, engage, and elevate. Are you ready to share it with the world?
So where is Sarah Jones CPA heading now? I mean, we just finished the tax season. It may be a little while before it comes up. What do you have coming down the pipe for
So
Sarah
we
Jones
have a
CPA?
lot of exciting things. And me and you have talked about personality types a lot. I'm a type 8, which and I'm married to a 9 who's basically the kindest person ever. So whenever I have these new ideas, he kind of rolls his eyes and he's like, all right, do you think you're going to have time to do? But anyways, so we are doing a lot of expanding. So we're growing our team, growing a lot on the tax side. We do offer CFO services, but we have signed up and I got a special certification as a certified CFO, and we're building out kind of a really, really specific service for those clients that are higher end that really not instead of, but on top of the clean books and the tax oversight, they really need a controller. And maybe it doesn't make sense to have an internal, $300,000 executive so they can use our team, and we give them goals, accountability, and we kind of keep them in line if they're not reaching their goals. And it's based on their goals of really just increasing cash flow, because that really is something that's such a continuous problem that I see with a lot of my business owners for sure. So we're doing that. I've said this and I've shared this with you for years. I have wanted to do financial planning and wealth advising for a long time. I actually have, and I got my master's degree in finance before my master's degree in accounting. So I'm going to be getting licensed for that this year and adding wealth planning. I think there's a lot of synergy to bringing a CPA and a financial planner together, because a lot of times there's some disconnect. So we're doing that. And I think my goal for next year is there's a couple of law schools that are now offering part-time kind of hybrid programs. And I've always wanted to do that. So I keep pushing it back because we keep getting so busy, but that's something I've always wanted to do. So that's on the horizon as well.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, why not? If you're going to be a financial planner and a CPA, you might as well be a lawyer. I mean,
well, I think there's a lot of, rather than having KCU and then you having all of these different, trusted advisors on your team, it's almost like you would come to one table and one firm could provide synergistically all of these services for you, and they all work together holistically. And I think there's a lot of power in that.
yeah, I think that there's a value that a lot of people dismiss on working with folks who understand your vision or that have the ability to help you expand your vision. And that's one thing I've always appreciated with you. You always celebrate. You're like, hey, that's awesome. Okay, what about, can we go here? Or can we get there? I know when I meet with Andrea, who's on your team with cash flow meetings, she's like, great, here's your goal. You got to go get this. And, I'm like, yeah, let's go get it, because it encourages me towards, going after it. And I think having all of those resources in one place, comprehensively working on a plan, especially if you're in a growth trajectory, that's extremely important to have people that understand your companies, your goals, and can ask really meaningful and insightful questions along the way. You're also working on a book. And the reason I know that is I had the joy of publishing it through Listed Books And so why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
As I finished my sentence, I remembered, well, duh, I mean, the book. So
Don't worry,
yes,
I'll bring it up. Yeah.
yes, your team has been amazing. And I've shared that with you. That's been a goal of mine for probably 2 years, but kind of one of those ones, okay, I'll get to it. So your team very graciously came in and said, okay, these are your deliverables. This is what you need to do. So we are, I think, almost towards the end part of it, fire my CPA. And it is in no way, shape, or form saying to fire your CPA and don't have a CPA. It is a cheesy, accountant's way of a hook and line sinker of marketing of if that resonates with you, it means you need a new CPA, the importance of a good CPA, how to find a good CPA. And I give you really tangible stories, things to look for, what you need, what you don't, even checklists and some things to go through when interviewing for a CPA and all of that jazz. So I'm really excited about that. It's been a great and fun process. And I'm saying that very honestly, it would still be something on my dream board. It would not be almost in fruition without your team for sure.
Well, no, and I mean, people need to know about you and people need ways to learn about you and having that permission because before I met you, I literally just thought a CPA was a necessary evil. Like I didn't find it helpful. I felt frustrated. I had a CPA that was kind of dismissive and demeaning. I had another CPA that was great, but she was retiring. And so we had a transition, but also I was telling her what I wanted to do. And so like the idea, like, I mean, literally, like if someone's like, hey, you can fire that person. Like I remember when people have told me that for other people I worked with, if I were with some of my other CPAs that I had before and I saw that book, I'd be like, oh my gosh, yes, please. Right. And what I love about your book, it's also not just saying, hey, being trite about that, but saying like, hey, here's what you should expect from a great CPA. This is what you should be getting. If you're not getting it, then you need to look somewhere else. And, really, as much as you're great at doing what you do, you're also very educationally inclined. And I know we've talked about maybe doing some online course stuff together and helping business owners. For the business people out there who are just getting started, because I mean, you shared, for the first couple of years, it was a struggle. What advice do you have for someone just getting started? Even beyond, just as a fellow entrepreneur?
Oh man, I would say by far, well, I'll say generically outside of my CPA hat, just be true to yourself. I feel like a lot of times I did things not necessarily that were wrong. That's not that way in any way, shape, or form, but things I probably wouldn't have done, but I was motivated by fear. Because you are at the beginning. I quit my job and I will say that most of the headaches and most of the situations that I messed up or got myself into was backed by somehow by myself and my fear and not being true and saying, you know what, doesn't really align with what I want. And at the beginning, you kind of don't know what you want. I feel like you pivot and that evolves, but just being true. I can look back at times that there was a gut check of, I probably shouldn't take that client on, or, oh, I don't think I want to do that. But I did it because I had fear and I needed money. And
Yeah.
I would say from the get-go, just to be true to yourself. From my financial standpoint, be organized. Look, I understand people like roll their eyes. They don't want to hear it. Receipts, you need receipts. You've got to have accounting records. Keep all of your business and your personal stuff completely separate. Don't commingle those from the get-go. If you just start those good habits as you grow, you will be further along. You'll have a clear audit trail. You'll have a good ledger. A lot of times people come to me way after they should have, and they have a mess. They don't have organization. They have no idea what's going on. They already have a high tax bill and they could have saved some money because with some planning. So I would say that by far, I find a lot of parallels with health and wealth. So like, you should be eating right. You should be going to the gym. Like do those little habits that will set you up for long-term success. Same thing here. Keep your receipts, have good records, keep all your bank stuff, get QuickBooks Online going. If that just makes you want to vomit, get a good CPA that will go in there and do it. A lot of times we can do your bookkeeping in the background, just a really simple engagement for really a very affordable rate. A lot of people think, oh, it's going to be astronomical. I mean, if you're a huge company and you need all this stuff, yeah, we can do some of those bigger engagements. But for a little guy that just needs clean books, we're a great solution for that.
No, I know a lot of people you've helped, and I would tell them like, hey, go talk to Sarah. And they're like, but does she work big companies? I said, look, she has a very clear policy of how to behave and very clear expectations, but they're scalable. I mean, that's the whole investment part on your side is a lot of small businesses, if managed well early on, if they have a great product or service targeting the right audience with the right strategy, will grow and succeed. It's better to have the fundamental foundational things put together. Instead, I was talking with that entrepreneur I was coaching recently, and I was begging him. I said, look, I know you're running all of your accounting on a spreadsheet, but you're getting in the high five figures now. You're going to be super frustrated very soon. Please just get QuickBooks Online. So he went and taught himself QuickBooks Online. He's like, man, I might need to talk to someone about how to actually set this up and run it. And I gave him your information and your team's information, because I said, look, anything I start now, I always have an admin in place and I always have my CPA team onboarded, because I just don't mess around with it. Once I start rolling with it, as you grow as an entrepreneur and you have new offerings, you get better at selecting winners, and so, but the losers have helped me over the years too, because part of the benefit of running businesses with a great CPA is like, oh my gosh, you lost that, but you gained all this over here. This loss will actually help you. I would have never known how to calculate and work all that, because I'm great at going and starting things and causing chaos and then hiring people to come put it together. So I highly recommend that. So what's one question I should have asked you, Sarah, that I haven't asked you?
Oh, that's a good question. And I love that this is all on the fly. I don't know. A question, maybe how to get started with Sarah Jones CPA.
Yeah. Well, how do we get started with Sarah Jones CPA?
So sarahjonescpa.com. We're located in Conroe, so if you're local, you can stop by. We are right off of 45 in League Line Road. We have a big billboard right on the freeway. Our phone number is 936-228-2231, and Jamie is our office admin, and she is fabulous. You can book a consult with me, or if you're looking really more for the bookkeeping and CFO and all of that stuff, our VP of Operations, Andrea, is phenomenal. She's who helps you every single week, and you can book with her or book with one of our tax managers. Or if you say, this is kind of most commonly what I'm referred for is tax planning. If you say, man, I don't understand my tax, or I feel like my taxes are too high, email me directly, Sarah, and it's Sarah with an H. My mama always says, the spelled right, Sarah with the H. So Sarah at sarahjonescpa.com. Shoot me an email. I can send you access to our secure portal. You can upload your prior year tax returns, and I'll do a complimentary review for you.
That's awesome. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for coming on the show, and I can't wait for folks to find you online. Where else can they find you online? Are you on social media anywhere?
Oh, we are. So we're getting into the social media world. So we're on Facebook. We're also on Instagram. I think it's Sarah CPA, Sarah Jones CPA. And we're trying to do all that stuff. It's definitely new for us, but there's not a lot doing that in that space. And when I get a new client, doing an intro session, I always say, how are you finding out about us? And it's more and more. Oh, I saw you on Instagram. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah,
So.
No, it's worth it. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for coming by. I'm sure I'll have you on the show again sometime soon to chat. And for those of you listening, thank you for listening this long. Please feel free to like, comment, and share with your friends, and we'll see you on the next episode.
That wraps up this episode of The KCC Show. Make sure to visit our website, thekccshow.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. You might also want to check out our Book for Business consultation, available at Lucid Books, or Double Your Sales Strategy session at Planify Agency. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.